And if you think about it, in maybe circles that you've been associated with as Christians, when unusual views, secular views, or fringe Christian views are discussed, there's a way that these things are handled, I guess, and a lot of times there's ridicule, or dismissal, or maybe less than careful assessment of these kinds of things. And this is not a good habit for us as Christians to get into. And so I want to tell you, here's how we went through this. There were like three main emphases, or three things that were characteristic of this discussion. And you need to know, by the way, it isn't like I sat down and said, here are the ground rules. This is just the way it all went, because this is the way we approach these issues, okay? The first thing we were trying to do, and Tim was excellent here, not only presenting the ideas, but then correcting others when necessary. And that is trying to be completely accurate and fair with the opposition. Trying to be completely accurate and fair with the opposition. That is, we do not want to mischaracterize another view. We want to make sure we get their views right. It's not only bad thinking if you get it wrong, it's bad manners. Okay, it is an informal fallacy called straw man, where you mischaracterize somebody else's view, and then the mischaracterization is easy to knock down, kind of like a straw man is easy to knock down. And so consequently, you can appear to be refuting a view when you're actually refuting a view the person does not hold, okay? We don't want to do that. We want to be completely accurate and fair with the characterization. We want to, and that also shows respect for the person who holds the view. You don't distort their view. This happens a lot of times to us. We don't like it, do we? And so we want to be careful not to do it with others. If we're going to present a view that we're going to critique, we're going to work hard at presenting that view accurately. Okay, that's the first thing they were trying to do. The second thing, I guess there are four things here now. The second thing we were trying to do is let's get a sense of how the field lays out for us. That is, if there are those in opposition to the classical view, which is that hell is eternal separation from God, that is constant conscious torment, and it's forever and ever. That's what eternal means. There's no ending. The clock doesn't run out. The clock doesn't even start to tick. If there are those that disagree with that view, then what are the varieties of disagreements? And it turns out that there are looks like there are three main schools of thought, or ways that the people who disagree with the classical view differ among themselves. Well, we want to be fair and distinguish these, and they also help us to be able to answer the challenge. Because if we're going to go in there and answer, we don't want to do a shotgun approach and just throw a bunch of stuff out there. No, we want to carefully say, well, some people hold this, and some people hold this, and some people hold this in opposition to the classical view. So that's the second thing. Well, how does this play out? What are the distinctions between the views? And many times there's only one opposing view. It's uniform. All that oppose the classical view have a single voice in their opposition, and the content of their views in opposition of the classical view. Okay, so you got to know that. Here's the third thing that we did. We wanted to try to assemble, and this is obvious, assemble counter arguments to their main points. Okay, so they believe there is no eternal hell for this reason and this reason and this reason and this reason. So maybe there's 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And some of them are scriptural arguments, because the Bible says thus and so about this word, and this word means something different than everybody thought it meant. Or they might argue, well, that's what we think God does, but doesn't that strike you as unreasonable, unfair, unjust, or something like that? That's another type of objection. And if that's the objection offered to us, then what will we say in response, given the biblical characterization? So we're going to be looking at the texts ourselves and say, you know what, this doesn't really work. their response doesn't work in light of the text, because the text says thus and so. So we're kind of building counter-arguments as we're talking back and forth for these different points. And sometimes we'll say, this is a real strong point for them. That is, it's hard to come up with a counter to this particular one. However, this point over here, this is a very weak point, and we have this biblical point that seems, among all the rest of the things we might be able to say, decisive. That is, there's no way they can get around this one. And in fact, some on their side have said that. They've said this one we really have a hard time dealing with. So it's good to know where your strengths and your weaknesses are in response to another issue, and to know where their strengths and weaknesses are as well. And so what we're doing is we're trying to deal with this issue, an opposing issue, and deal with it fairly. And we want to be completely accurate and fair with the opposition. That's our first. A lot of the discussion. What do they actually believe? And then we're looking at how the opposition lays out in terms of categories, so we can organize the enterprise a little bit. Then we want to think about the main points and figure counter-arguments, and which ones of their points are stronger and which are weaker, and which ones of ours are stronger and weaker. And is there a point, an argument, scriptural or otherwise, that seems to be decisive? Now, they hold their view because they think that some of their arguments, at least, are decisive. And we hold our view because we think just the opposite. Some of our arguments are decisive and theirs aren't. There's one more thing that we've done here. This is the fourth thing, and then I'll take a break and take a call, is that we were working really hard not just to come up with the counter-arguments to their main points, but trying to anticipate counter-arguments to our counter-arguments. And I have talked about this before. I know I've talked about it on the air, and I encourage it when I'm doing training with people. Always try to figure out, if you're going to have a point of view, what might the other side say regarding your view? How would they object? What might the weak points of your view be, whether your view is the view proper or whether it's a counter-argument to a view that you're trying to correct. And that's what we were facing in this case. And so we'd lay this thing out. This is our idea. Well, this is a point that they've offered, but here's the problem with it. Somebody would toss that in. And then somebody would jump in and say, wait a minute. Here's what they're going to say to that. They're going to say this, this, and this. And so now we're trying to deal with the counters to the counters kind of thing. And that's the way to work through issues if you want to deal with issues in a thorough fashion. Now, we have to do that because you're counting on us to do this. This is part of what we do for a living, so to speak. This is our role in your life. But we are doing it this way because it's the sound way to do it. That is, we would like, we're doing it, hopefully, the right way. We have to do it that way because, you're counting on us, but it's the same way you ought to do it too. Maybe not as thoroughly, but the idea is exactly the same. The process that you'll go through is the same. First, be completely accurate and fair with the opposition. Then, if the points of view are complex, how do you organize that so you can make sense of the parts? Third, what are the counter-arguments you might give to their views? And then fourth, anticipating the counters to your counter-arguments and how you might respond to them. It's the best way, I think, to go about it. Anyway, that's a little teaching you how to think, not just teaching you what to think.